Well, good morning. I'm very glad that all of you are very awake after that little dancing exercise. I myself don't speak Swahili, but I guess it meant I'm passing the ball to somebody else. Am I right? Because that's what often happens within project management, is we pass the ball to the next guy to pick up. So a little bit about myself. I'm based in Johannesburg. I'm South African. So I feel comfortable on our continent of Africa. I started my career many years ago, a couple of decades, and you can see. And I started out in process engineering, studied some industrial engineering. So all this go to Gemba and let's see what Gemba is doing. No, I feel comfortable with those discussions. For my sins, I moved out of a production engineering environment into project management and project control systems. And I've been happily working for one of the largest project management and control systems companies in the world for close on a decade now. And I've seen some transformation on the African continent as far as project management and the whole approach towards project management is concerned. So the small organization I work for is Oracle. We're a very focused business unit within Oracle called Engineering, Construction and Engineering Business Unit. And our focus is really on you guys, helping to enable the project management, construction management community to put processes and systems in place to actually do what you do on a daily basis. So I myself no longer a project manager, but I work within project management environment. So I have to show the slide. I'm sure you've all seen it. So the question that we need to answer today or want to discuss is how can project managers ensure the financial sustainability, keyword, of the project supply chain, another keyword. So these are areas of passion for me. We heard in the previous discussion about cost planning and sustainability of the organization. And the whole thing with projects is that to be able to create that asset at the end of the day, there's a whole supply chain of organizations involved with the project, not just on the design, but actually the delivery. So why would organizations get into project management and construction management and IT projects if it's not because it's a business? So yes, it's fantastic to go through the new airport terminal, great new asset, but it was a business for somebody. It's great to see the SGR coming through town, but it's a business for somebody. And we as project managers need to make sure that that is a sustainable business for somebody, that we don't put people out of business who wants to do business. The whole fundamental of entrepreneurship is what's growing Africa and what's growing jobs and skills. So we need to protect our project supply chain. So this is really an area where I'm very passionate about, taking the message throughout the world, because guess what? It's not just in Africa that we have a challenge in maintaining the supply chain. In the UK, in the US, the better the economic environment, the bigger the challenge to the supply chain of the project. And we'll see a little bit about that. So I want to tie into the objectives for Africa, Africa 2063. It's a long time away. I hope I'm not still working in 2063, but let's hope that we achieve some of these objectives before the time. So the first one I want to talk about today and bring into the discussion is economic sustainability. And this links into how do we make the business of construction, the business of project management, the business of business systems project management, how do we make that sustainable in our continent? The second one I want to talk and bring into discussion is really about continental and regional integration. Thinking about the SGR, thinking about the airport. How do we bring the continent together? Just in the Economic Forum meetings in Cape Town last week, there was a lot of discussion about intra-Africa trade. How do we enable the trade? How do we make people and equipment move across boundaries? The next one is about governance. So unfortunately I couldn't make it yesterday, I only arrived late in the afternoon, But my colleagues tell me there was some heated debates about governance. And I want to tie into the discussion of we need governance within our project environment. And then the last one I want to bring into discussion is leveraging ICT, the digital era, fourth industrial revolution. How do we bring that into the project environment, and how do we leverage that to make our project supply chain more sustainable? So sustainability for me is not just surviving of the business, but the business is actually thriving within the construction and project management environment. So infrastructure development in Africa is quite big. And you would have heard that my job really involves infrastructure development and very specifically dealing with public sector infrastructure development. And that's just because I'm a very patient person. I've got time to hang around public sector infrastructure development projects because they tend to take a long time before they get off the ground and then a long time before they are delivered. So it's my retirement plan, just so you know. So I think the important thing with public sector infrastructure development in Africa specifically is governments are trying to use economic stimulus programs within infrastructure specifically to get the communities to take part in it. We want to develop small and medium enterprises through infrastructure development. I mean, if you take a country like Botswana, anybody from Botswana attending? There's economic stimulus. If you take South Africa, there's economic stimulus. If you take Kenya, there's the big four projects, it's economic stimulus. And the big idea behind that, from a government perspective, is use public sector money to actually stimulate the economy. So we can't go around killing the economy by not making these businesses financially sustainable. So SMME development is big business for infrastructure development. But going with that is actually job creation. I mean, we've got serious unemployment challenges in some of the countries, especially the one where I'm from. So the construction industry still generates a lot of jobs. So if we stimulate the construction industry, make those businesses sustainable, we can create jobs and make sure that these jobs continue into the future. And also skills development, and taking those skills leveraged from one project to the next, to the one after that. And I think this is where we've got a slight change if I look at Europe and the US, where skills development and job creation is not the key incentive to infrastructure development. The key incentive there is let's have better infrastructure for better economic prosperity. But in Africa, we are really focused around job creation and skills development as part of the overall infrastructure spend. So the types of infrastructure we're talking about here is rail infrastructure, thinking about SGRs, high-speed trains, those type of things. Airport as a transportation system, moving people by air, connecting countries, connecting continents as such. The renewable energy programs, which supports those infrastructure. And then the ICT and e-learning systems, which are also enabling environment for infrastructure. So if we think about infrastructure as a complex program, it's not a project. Some of my friends from Kenya, a couple of years ago, there was a project, and it's probably still going on, about introducing tablets into schools. But that's not just a project, let's introduce tablets. It's about bringing the curriculum, bringing electricity, bringing Wi-Fi connectivity, bringing security, bringing the transportation systems to get the tablets to the school. That's not a single project. It's a massive program. It's a massive undertaking that links so many of these dependent and related projects together. So if we don't protect that supply chain of the program, and one component of that supply chain goes out of business, we are actually compromising the delivery of the entire program and all objectives of the government that goes with that. So not just thinking about the pretty engineering designs, but actually delivering the business of the project. Now, if we look at what's happening within the market, and it's very unfortunate, but it's quite difficult to get project-related statistics in Africa. Somehow, we just haven't collected global continent-wide statistics about what's happening. So if we just look at some of the available information, if we look in South Africa, about 60% of people employed in formal employment is at small and medium enterprises. That's a significant component of the workforce in SMMEs. 34% of South Africa's GDP comes from SMMEs. Again, it's a significant amount of money. Globally, up to 9% of the workforce is employed in construction. In South Africa, that's actually 10%. So if we don't protect our projects, we're losing GDP, we're losing employment, we are losing economic activity. Hence, there's an incentive to protect them. Unfortunately, if we also look at more statistics, almost 40% of small and medium enterprises have been paid late for their services. Oh, something is happening. Not that they were not paid, not that they didn't provide the services, they were paid late for those services. Up to 80% of SMMEs fail in the first 3 years. Not because of poor work, not because of a lack of work, but simply because of cash flow issues. They don't have money in the bank to sustain the business. Okay? And unfortunately, our government specifically is a big culprit of not paying. And then if we look at subcontractors, the Construction Industry Development Board is telling us that 60% of subcontractors within the construction engineering environment has received a payment late from the main contractor or the general contractor. That's a significant challenge to these organizations. So the question is, what are we doing to remedy the situation? Do you guys in the different countries in Africa recognize this trend? Is it a challenge for you? Is it something that needs to be addressed? And I'm not taking the construction industry as an example, but the same problem actually is present within the entire environment. Now, one of the challenges that we see in the construction industry, one of the reasons why this happens is the way that we contract our projects. And I'm sure it's not just within construction that we contract this way. Even delivering an IT system, an ERP solution, a business transformation project. We have the project owner. Anybody representing project owner organizations? Raise of hands. Okay, you guys are some of the culprits, but not all of them. And those project owner organizations often have direct contracts with a whole number of other organizations, designers, suppliers, and so on. But often there's a main contractor or a general contractor, the organization that really takes accountability for delivering that project to the owner organization. And in turn, that organization has many contracts with suppliers, consultants, subcontractors, specialty contractors, and even those companies can have more contracts. So the challenge there is this very deep supply chain that we are creating. So the wonderful thing for the project owner is they can step back and say, the accountability for delivering this project rests with my main contractor. We are innocent until proven guilty. If you have a problem, speak to the main contractor. But whose asset is it? It's the project owner's asset. So this multi-level structure brings some challenges. Have you ever heard of the term, I'll pay you when I get paid? Pay when paid. That is the number one killer of subcontractors. Because what happens? The main contractor needs to pay the subcontractor. So the subcontractor invoices the main contractor, the main contractor needs to invoice the customer. The customer's got a pile of invoices, they'll get to it eventually. 30 or 60 days later, they pay the main contractor. 30 or 60 days later, they pay the subcontractor. By that time, the poor subcontractor is out of business because they don't have cash flow. And unfortunately, I've seen so many contracts, construction contracts, where this pay when paid clause is in the contract. It's written down there. And the poor subcontractors and the suppliers, they sign the contract because they're hard up for work, okay? So I've also seen, and in Kenya, unfortunately, this is a big issue. Sorry, I've got colleagues from Kenya, so I know a lot about what's happening there, so sorry to pick on you guys, is invoices getting paid later than the contract terms. I think in Kenya, they use a lot of FIDIC contracts. FIDIC says pay after 56 days. What happens? We pay after 90, 120 days. Just because that's what we decide to do. So there's a challenge. The next problem we see in this long chain is collusion and corruption. I will pay you if I have something in my pocket. How much is it worth for you to get your money early? I'll open my pocket, you put a brown envelope, I'll make sure your payment goes through. I don't get my brown envelope, well, you've got to wait 120 days. Okay? That is a problem. Not just in South Africa, not just in Africa, but other places in the world exactly the same. So don't feel special here. I'm not picking on Africa. Another big problem is this one. Disconnected and manual systems. We heard in the previous presentation about systems. I'm the process and systems guy, not the people's person. So systems is what I do. But so many companies rely on Excel and email and hard copy invoices being transferred. So those disconnected systems, they actually cause a delay, not because anybody wants to cause a delay, but it does take some time to update your Excel, send it somewhere, take it with the courier, ends at the bottom of the pile. It's a challenge, and then I don't get my invoice paid. And then, of course, this very important one at the bottom. Owner organizations and main contractors protect their own cash flow. Why am I going to give the money in my bank account to you, then I have to borrow money from the bank? I would rather use your money to finance my organization. Sounds familiar? It's a big challenge, and the subcontractors just go with it and accept it because they have got very little choice in doing that. So the very structure of our industry is causing the very problem that's killing our small and medium enterprises. So what's the effect here? We understand the problem, but what is the effect? And maybe we don't always think about these effects when we sign these contracts. So if we pay our subcontractors, consultants, suppliers late, what needs to happen? They've got to go to the bank and borrow working capital, or to the guy on the corner at high interest. They then have to pay interest on the money. And because they probably don't have good collateral, they've got to pay high interest on the money. So what's the profit margin in construction and projects? I've seen 1.5%, I've seen 2%. Fantastic companies do 3%. I don't want to embarrass the guy from WBHO, but what's your rate? And they are doing very well, okay? So if I pay interest to the bank, what happens to the little money I've made out of profit? Gone. So now that I've eroded my profit, I'm going to cause financial distress within that business. So if there's no cash, there's no profit, they've got to deliver distress in the business. Businesses go out of business because they are in financial distress. So for those of you in construction, and I guess there's like 15% of you in construction, but even in an IT project, what happens if the subcontractor goes out of business? Your project is delayed because you've got to settle the claims, you've got to stop the work, you've got to go out to tender, you've got to find another subcontractor, and whose delay is it? At the end of the day, that delay ends up with the owner. So who's the organization suffering? Although they stepped away, it's the owner organization who suffered because of this phenomenon that we've got. So subcontractors are not stupid. They've been in this game for a while. So they just add a factor into the cost estimate to make up for this. So owner, what do you think happens to your project cost? It goes up. Did you get extra value for that more money? No. Nothing. So we are creating this own turmoil for ourselves. Costs go up, 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 up. So because the costs go up, we want to put more fixed price contracts in place. What happens with fixed price contracts? We pay them late. The subcontractors notice, they up the price, and so we go on and on and on. So talking about continuous improvement in the previous presentation, this is the death cycle. It's not continuous improvement. There's no benefit to the projects. So I'm no mathematician, although I'm a cost engineer. So I just did this very, very, very simplistic example cash flow with end of period cash flows. Don't criticize me for my maths, okay? What did I try to explain is in 3 scenarios. The first scenario, and focus on that little red graph in the top left hand, okay? The first scenario is where we say we will pay a contractor after 30 days. 30 days from invoice with 10% retention. And look at the size of the graph going negative. The second one is if we pay the contractor at 60 days of the invoice. And the last one is let's pay the contractor just after payment certificate. So the first one, the poor contractor, needs to have like 28% of the contract value in cash on hand to sustain themselves if everything goes well. The second one is the poor contractor needs to have almost 40% cash on hand to sustain themselves because the owner is going to pay late. Although under 30 contracts, that's almost just contractual terms and conditions. And then the last one, the contractor is in a much better situation, 18% cash on hand of the contract value, assuming they will get paid very, very quickly. So, I've seen in good economic times, contractors go out of business when they've got too much work. Because what happens? They actually take on this scenario and they run out of cash. Not out of work, not out of good delivery. They simply run out of cash with too many of those projects in their portfolio of execution. So we willingly and knowingly contract disposition, knowing we're going to kill our subcontractors with this scenario if we don't pay them in time. Seems familiar to you guys? Who worked for a bankrupt company in the past who went out of business for poor cash flow? Maybe I shouldn't raise your hand. I'm just raising the question. So what can our project managers do? And I'm talking about project managers, but I'm actually talking about project organizations, the whole discipline of project management. What can we do? Well, one of the big problems is just about communication. How do we communicate between different organizations, different disciplines? How do we coordinate activity? Because if we don't coordinate activity, the process does not move as it was designed. How can we create insight into what is happening? How do I even know that I haven't paid my contractors if I don't have insight into what is happening? If I don't have insight, I don't have any confidence. I don't have confidence, the GC doesn't have confidence, the project owner doesn't have confidence, and the funders do not have confidence. And so this is the first time I'm bringing the funders into this discussion. The funders need to have confidence that the money that they give to the projects will be managed in a good process with lots of governance and traceability in there. And the reason why we're not achieving these is we don't have standardization of systems and processes in place. So I really like the next slide. And I hope that I remember the sequencing right. Because this really depicts the challenge that we have on large projects, whether it be infrastructure, business systems, research projects, doesn't matter. Yeah, my favorite slide, have a look. Nice big stadium being constructed, goes through the life cycle on the left as the stadium is constructed. And what's on the right here is the communication models, communication flow and patterns for that project. as the project progresses. Look at the number of interactions, the number of project people, volume of data. It is really, really difficult for any organization to deal with this level of complexity. If we can't deal with this complexity, every point on that diagram is an organization within the supply chain. If we don't know where they are, what they're doing, how can we ever hope to pay them for the work that they've completed on time? Big challenge. Did you like my picture? I love it. So the importance here is really around connected information. And that's why I want to bring in this discussion about ICT in Africa. You know, there's companies like Liquid Telecom. Anybody from Liquid Telecom in the room? They are building a fiber network from Cape Town to Cairo, a terrestrial fiber network. How can we leverage that and connect it with our data centers and cloud solutions to bring systems and processes to projects across Africa? So how do we leverage that to deal with this complexity and data volume that we are being faced with? So I deal with a lot of customers throughout the world, not just in Africa. And if we really critically distill the three things that we think can be done, it's very simple. The first one is owner organizations, whether being private sector or public sector, need to make sure that there's money for the project. It sounds obvious and simple, right? If I travel, I see a lot of half-built buildings standing still. I see some roads ending, not going anywhere. I hear about railway networks stopping. Cedric, in your country, railway network stopping. Simply because the owner organizations did not secure funding or financing for that project. So, have money to do the project. The second one for owners to be able to pay is the owner organization needs to make sure that they are getting the asset they've. Fortunately, Oracle pays me every month for the work I've done very predictably. But in the construction industry, that is not that simple. So let's look into these three areas and see what drives those different methods. So the first one is a process called strategic portfolio management or strategic portfolio alignment. I highlighted the 2063 objectives. African Union, I've got a portfolio of projects across the continent that leads up their deliverables to those strategic objectives. The government of Kenya, the government of South Africa, the government of Tanzania, and all the other, Nigeria, is Edia. So every government has got their national development plan, national infrastructure development plan. They've got objectives. Are the projects identified throughout all the different departments and different areas of the country aligned to the strategic objectives of the country? And the reason why we want to make sure of that in the public sector environment is we have elections every couple of years in every country. I have seen projects, transformational projects, being cancelled halfway because the new president or the new cabinet that comes in did not share the vision for where that project fits into the strategic objectives of the country. If we had a traceable process that actually screened all the possible projects and put them in the portfolio and everybody agrees, that project's got a better chance of survival with a new election. But this is the case with CEOs in private sector companies as well. I come in my first 100 days in office as the CEO, I need to do something, let's cancel that, let's start this. Where does the money? We just wasted half a project's worth of money, okay? And we're not paying our subcontractors. Along with selecting the right projects is the capital planning. I really enjoyed the comment about know what's the budget. So what is the capital planning budget for our portfolio of projects? Do we know what's the weighted average cost of capital that's coming into that portfolio? Do we know that our treasury has got money available to pay for that capital spent? Do we know what the effect of foreign currency change is going to be on that capital plan? We live in a volatile exchange rate regime. So if we don't make sure that we understand our capital plans, private or public sector, that could be a nasty surprise to the project not being funded. And bring the governance into the process. Now, I talked about emails and Excel earlier. That's not so good to make sure that we can actually deliver on our business processes. But leveraging technology, leveraging the cloud systems and everything that's available within a project environment, we can make sure that change management processes, RFIs, budget approvals, payment certificates, that the process for initiation, review and approval is above board, and that we can make sure that the people giving the money to the project feels comfortable that they can deal with the project without money disappearing. The next one is about the owner side. How can the owner make sure they get what they want? The owners cannot stand back and say, GC, go on. The owners have to step up and say, we are going to take ownership of the data of the project, of the common data environments that we're going to use to design these projects. We as the owners are going to insist on modern construction management processes, building information management processes, because we as the owner need to get hold of the data after the project to maintain our assets for the future. Okay, without that baseline, you're not going to see it. I'm using so many words that Brenda used earlier without intention, but she discussed baseline. I have one. Yeah. Okay, and then also model-based scheduling, project delivery according to how the 3D design is actually done. The next one is about cost and contract management. Going all the way from the budget management approval, funding, where does the money come from, expenditure categories, expenditure items, types of expenditure, manage the cost component of the project. If we don't know that we've got money and we don't know where the money is going, we are nowhere. And that associated with contract management. Who uses FIDIC contracts? Anybody experienced with FIDIC? It's a somewhat nasty contract to the contractors, eh? NEC contracts? Must be from South Africa. Yeah, okay. So there's many different contracts, but every contract has got its own terms and conditions, own workflow, own methodology. So if you actually build these systems, have the workflows in place, you can bring the compliance, the contractual compliance, into the system as opposed to on an email. Okay? Contractual compliance is exceptionally important when you want to go for dispute adjudications or extension of time claims. If you don't have the information, not going to happen. So a lot of contractors don't get paid because there's an open claim. Contractors don't get paid because there's a dispute. So the owners can do things to actually alleviate the systemic problems that's causing that behavior of non-payment. Critical path scheduling. Now I know you guys are all about agile, right? I see somebody nodding because you're in IT. Okay. I'm in construction, I love critical path scheduling. But I also like lean scheduling, so don't get me wrong. So scheduling, risk management, making sure that we can go according to the contractual terms and conditions for risk registers, risk review, risk mitigation, actually optimizing our project. We as the owners need to do what we can to make sure that we've got predictable project behavior and project delivery so that we can eliminate the surprises to the subcontractors not getting paid. Then, very important one is the payment administration. And it sounds simple, right? You give me an invoice, I pay it. But unfortunately, it's not that easy. So the first important thing is, do we know who we are going to pay? Who's the vendor? Has the vendor got their tax clearances? Have they got all their in South Africa BE status? Have they got their safety certificates? Have they got who knows what to actually qualify the vendor, including the banking details? Do you know that you're going to pay the correct bank account for the poor vendor and that money is not magically disappearing into somebody else's bank account? If the project accountant is not sure that that information is correct, they will not pay the subcontractor. They shouldn't. It causes a delay, so we have to do that properly. The whole process of payment application, payment certification. QS is in the room. I know it's a PM conference, not a QS conference. Quantity surveyors in the room. They live for month end, when they can process all these claims and do lists and so on. But to actually make sure that the approval of payment is correct for work that's been done. Okay? That's quite an important step, especially where there's a funding organization that's involved. Or lien waivers. Do you guys understand lien waivers? Anybody uses JBC contracts? But within common law, the subcontractor owns the deliverables in the project until paid for. So that's another administration process that if it's not in place, can actually delay the payment. So are you managing your lien waivers or release certificates in a timely manner? Bank interfaces and of course updating the ERP. So this whole payment process is quite an important one. So here's the scenario that we currently see on projects. And I've just got an artificial timeline, not because it's true. As we move towards the end of the month, the contractor will submit their payment certificate or payment application. Okay? The general contractor or project owner will spend a lot of time validating that application because they first have to go to site and measure or inspect or look at the deliverables and say, we approve this, goes up the governance chain for approvals. Now the payment application becomes a payment certificate. Then the accountants get hold of it. And they make an invoice, and it's submitted. And then a long time goes by, no value-adding work is actually happening on that invoice until some point, 56, 60, 90, 120 days later, magically there's the payment in the bank account. Okay. This happens when we have those disparate systems not connected, not giving due regard for what it does to the small business's cash flow. So what we want to achieve is at least, if we implement all these systems, at least bring the payment back into contractual terms, so we don't pay late. So what's the benefit to the owner of not paying late? A lot of contracts have late payment penalties. Does late payment penalties add value to the project bottom line? No, it just ups the cost of the project. So if we have systems in place to at least pay within the contractual agreed time frame, we don't incur the late payment penalties. That's a bonus. And what we are advocating is to say, if all things being equal, we have systems in place, the project's not going to suffer. Why can we not enable small, medium enterprises with early payment? After I get my payment approval, pay me, please, if I'm the subcontractor. Why should it take more than 1 or 2 days to pay me? I don't have to go and look in the eyes of the bank manager to fund my organization. Pay me what's due. So we are advocating from a technology perspective to say, it's not magic. It's not today I decide I'm going to do something. You first have to dissolve or get rid of the old practices, put the new practice and systems in place, and then use them. It is not an overnight decision to change business processes. But as we stand today, from a technology perspective, there's absolutely nothing preventing the project management community to implement these corrective actions to protect the business supply chain or the project supply chain to the greater good of the continent. So what are we doing? We're trying to help project managers, the project community. But if you guys are following anything related to project management technology, construction technology, engineering technology, you'll understand that there is an uptake of technology within our environment, but very slow. Unfortunately, it's quite a big environment. So it's very difficult for any one organization to deliver on technology requirements, or for any project organization to absorb all the technology, do their own architecture, do their own deployment quickly, and figure all of this out while you're actually trying to deliver real projects to the bottom line of the environment. So technology companies like Oracle spending a lot of time and effort actually pre-integrating these different building blocks to make your lives a little bit easier in terms of digitizing your own business. So of course there's benefits. We talked about ICT. I'm sure all the ICT project managers in the room knows all about cloud solutions, right? Cloud is the next big thing, and well, I can't say next, it's here, and I'm using it because I'm using Twitter, and that's cloud, and I'm using my bank, and that's cloud, and I'm using anything else that's cloud technology. But there's some benefits to the project environment in doing this. Quick adoption, quick rollout, back office support provided, technology upgrades done for you. So think about what you can do from available off-the-shelf systems that's easy to deploy to help your project environment to go through the transition. Of course, there are benefits. Nothing comes without benefits, otherwise there's no business case. That's a nice project management term for you. And the business case is really around making sure you don't have misaligned projects. Why would you want to do a project that's not part of your portfolio or not aligned to your portfolio? Make sure you use your capital correctly, owner organizations. Reduce contractor cost. Not because magically you're going to have less contractors, but less changes, less penalties, less late payments, those type of things. With the associated benefit of fewer cost overruns. And of course, reduce claims on your project. Claims are not very productive in terms of delivery of projects in the environment. So these are some of my viewpoints, my organization's viewpoints, on how you can implement transformation within your business to really think about the social impact that you have on jobs and people by the simple thing of not paying subcontractors on time. So technology, if you follow my QR code there, you'll get to our website. Sneak that in. PMI didn't even realize. Well, thanks guys. This is our view. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Werner. Sorry to take the mic from you. We only have one. I think we're going to have two circulating in the audience so that we can take more questions. So, who's up first? Behind the pillar. Please do introduce yourself and maybe peep round so that we can see you.
Thank you so much. My name is Sello Krina. I'm from South Africa. I just want to pose a question to Mr. Werner. Specifically, you touched something on issue of governance. Because in some of the projects, you see that there is no good governance in terms of ensuring process flow to ensure that we get value out of the projects that are happening. I will share shortly the grant funding processes where I used to work with at, whereby there were projects, huge value projects that were assigned to ensure that they are delivered. But because of lack of good governance within the organization to ensure that people who assigned projects or the contractors, because of they had like total autonomy to make certain change and decision, which influenced the turnaround time of the project, the payments and all that. And in your view, how do you recommend or suggest before projects are able to assign or implemented, whether the issue of governance, how best can we deal with that to ensure that there is no issues that I am relating to? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Let me be a little bit controversial in some of my statements. You can get me over tea time if you don't like my statements. I'm always surprised that organizations who profess to do projects as their business don't have good project management practice and systems in place. Okay, I am astounded by that. They are willing to use Excel, email, Dropbox, whatever. Because the owner organizations are not insisting on systems, processes, and governance. So the GC, I'm not going to name names, don't worry, they are happy to do whatever the owner organization allows them to do. If it's Excel, they will get by with Excel. So although I'm astounded by the project organizations, I cannot believe that the owner organization will pay millions or billions for projects and not insist on professional delivery. I think the change needs to happen at the owner organization, who needs to understand that there's an asset life cycle, and the capital cost of any system, even if it's an ERP, is so small in comparison to the operational life cycle of that asset. And if you don't have the as-built baseline of your new asset, good luck in getting it up to speed quickly at full production, and good luck maintaining that asset if you don't have the baseline. The responsibility, sir, I think needs to be put at the doorstep of the owner organization, demanding good governance on their projects. Is that fair? Good.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Collins from Uganda. Now, we've been learning a lot about many things. One of the things is AI. And I want to ask, is this a link or a bridge between what we're doing and how AI is coming into the construction industry?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about the technology landscape at the end. And we've got this thing called the Innovation Lab in Chicago, where we actually do this type of things. So, Oracle is a technology company and data company. So we've got technology landscape and data points to do predictive analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning on the possible outcomes of projects and advise project management where to go and focus for corrective action. So it's happening. It will happen in your lifetime, even not in 20 or 62, 63. But keep an eye out for that. It's really exciting stuff.
Good morning. Is it afternoon already? Good afternoon. My name is Linda Mbokwe from Randwater, South Africa. My question really, I think it's fantastic that there's software out there and it's being amalgamated and it's helping with governance and project running. But I think on your first point, especially subcontractors and contractors, how much transparency do those kind of softwares have? If I'm hosting it on a cloud, I know as the end user or the project owner, I can get into all the details. But I think there was a huge debate on governance/corruption. But transparency can overcome a lot of those brown envelope situations. I wanted to know what is the capability of the software to start exposing, at least at the very, at the least, how the invoice has been processed, where the invoice is sitting and where it's traveling. If there's correspondences, what are they that are holding up so that it becomes something that everyone can know. And you don't have to wait for project meetings or project reporting for those kind of things to come up.
Yeah, that's a very good question. First, I want to make one of those nasty statements again. My experience with many public sector projects is that they did not want governance and transparency over the last couple of years in my country, South Africa. Okay? Because that would mean there's full traceability as to who got the brown envelope, when, where, from who, what was in it. People don't like that. Fortunately, we are moving. We are moving forward. So the benefit with these systems is it's end or it's user based, so I know exactly who's doing what in the system, when, what are they doing, what was the values that they entered, what was the changes. And what really helps us with that is the fact that these are mostly cloud-based systems. As long as you've got internet access, you can deploy this wherever you want. But another benefit is a little concept we call neutrality. Now, there's a little thing called in contracts saying known and knowable information. So if I'm the project owner and I've got access to everything of anybody, I have got the opportunity to know about everything. So when there's a project change, I shouldn't be surprised because it was hidden there somewhere in file X and I could get to it, so it was knowable information. That's not good for anybody. So we've got this concept of neutrality, which means that everybody uses the same system. I can put my contract document or documentation drawing specifications in. My friend Cedric can put his in, unless he gives it to me on a transmittal, or as I do a submittal to him. He can't see my information, I can't see his. And that concept of neutrality has been tested in court and has stood up to say the project owner owns the project environment, the common data environment we call it. The subcontractor can put all their documents, drawing specifications, communication, everything in there, manage it with good governance, but me as the project owner are only entitled to that information once it's given to me. So what's the benefit to the owner? They know that the processes are in place to manage the project properly. Okay. So systems are real-time, accessible, full traceability, full security, backups, disaster recoveries, all those wonderful things taken care of. Did I answer your question or did I successfully sidestep the issue? Grab me over tea. Okay. Yes.
So I'm going to allow one more question, and then I'm going to encourage, I'm not going to decide who are, so that we've already got someone with the mic, but then I'm going to encourage you to approach Werner over lunch, and maybe sit with him and ask him.
Hello, my name is Johan from Ivory Coast. I would like to ask a question regarding, we see in the technological landscape actually that we are talking a lot about blockchain technology and so on, related to governance aspect of project. So I would like to know if within your software, the software application and your portfolio of application that you're selling actually, if there is a place for blockchain related contract, I mean, management of contract and all those supply chain aspects that you talked about.
Good, thanks. Again, we're fortunate that we've got Oracle behind us, so Oracle's got the blockchain cloud service already available for people to develop what they want. But that same technology is going into our contract management systems from a transaction traceability and ring fencing of transaction perspective. So again, watch the space because it's part of what's already available, but it's also part of our future roadmap to leverage those advanced technologies